Greetings and welcome to another impressions video here at Words About Games, and today we're going to be looking at Someday You'll Return. Someday You'll Return is a narrative-driven psychological horror game set in a gigantic, picturesque Czech Republic forest. You play as Daniel, whose daughter has run away from home. Luckily, Daniel is able to track the GPS on her phone to an ancient Moravian forest. The forest is home to far more than one runaway girl, however, and Daniel must confront the nightmares and malevolent forces that rise up against him. Despite the horrors contained within, the first thing I noticed about Someday You'll Return is that it's drop-dead gorgeous. After a brief introduction sets up the plot, characters, and stakes, you're let loose into this huge and beautiful forest, which is based on real-world locations in the Czech Republic. There are some jaw-dropping sights as you explore, looking for your lost daughter, and the picturesque beauty is really well juxtaposed by the horrific things you witness and the general uneasy creepiness of the forest itself. That beauty does come at a price, however. There are moments during play where the frame rate started to judder significantly. Thankfully, this never happened during tense moments, so the horror and well-cultivated atmosphere of the game were never compromised. Frame rate dips are mostly contained to exploration, or when you're moving from one place to the other, so it's not a huge deal. But it's noticeable, and momentarily annoying. I also had some issues with controller support on PC. The controls for the game didn't feel particularly optimized for a controller, and I was constantly given button prompts for mouse and keyboard. Switching to mouse and keyboard improved my experience significantly, and hopefully there'll be a patch deployed pretty quickly to improve things somewhat. Developer CBE Software have actually been pretty great at updating the game while I've been playing ahead of its release date. A big part of the experience is exploration. This is a pretty big forest, full of many different points of interest and winding paths, and the way you navigate it is actually quite novel, for a video game at least. You need to rely on maps posted throughout the park to find the different trails to follow to reach whatever your destination you're aiming for. They work almost exactly like they do in a real-life park. Different trails are colour-coded, and there are markers dotted around the forest as you explore to help keep you on the right track. There are other ways to explore, hand-drawn maps to find, clues in the environment, but there are no waypoints to guide you. Just a destination and some coloured markers to lead you in the right direction. Apart from that, you're on your own. This helps to really immerse you in the world and make the forest feel suitably gigantic, but it can be a double-edged sword at times, as it can be quite easy to get lost, both in terms of navigation and in terms of objective. I've had a couple of moments where I've been unclear on what I'm supposed to be doing, or how to accomplish what I'm supposed to be doing. One example was when I was trying to find some herbs to make a cure for some poison. I spent a long time wandering the grounds of a chapel looking for the right herbs because I'd missed an item due to my vision being blurred and obscured. Or another time, I had a key, but couldn't figure out which of the locked doors I was faced with that it would open. There were plenty of times I got stuck, basically. Someday You'll Return harkens back to classic survival horror games, in that it gives you some clues, but relies on you working a lot out for yourself. Most of the time, this works really well. Very occasionally, it works less so. But once I managed to muddle through whatever problem or objective I was stuck on, I'd get sucked right back into the game, because Someday You'll Return has a really well-crafted atmosphere. This is a really creepy game, even when you're not confronted with anything particularly horrific. Just wandering this huge, expansive forest alone is enough to give me the chills. But the game makes masterful use of disturbing imagery and moments to really heighten its tension. There have been so many moments of horror, both subtle and otherwise, that have had me sweating or made my skin crawl. The best of these are expertly understated. Diary entries that aren't quite right, objects or images that just feel wrong on a fundamental level. When Someday You'll Return wants you to feel chills, you feel chills. Which makes the bigger scares that much scarier. By building a foundation on impressively creepy imagery and an always tense atmosphere, the most shocking moments land so much harder. There are plenty of shocks and surprises in the game, and it would be criminal of me to ruin them in a review that is suggesting you should play this game. Not all of these shocks are jump scares. Those exist here for sure, and they're well earned thanks to the dread atmosphere cultivated by the game. But sometimes the shocks are more insidious, moments of implied horror, or twists in the story. I don't want to say much about the story. Like much of the horror, the narrative here is quite understated. There's the straightforward and explicit part, that you're a father who has come to the forest in search of your missing daughter, and weird and scary stuff starts going down. But Someday You'll Return has more going on in its narrative than this, and slowly piecing together what the game is trying to show you is just as impactful, if not more so. Someday You'll Return is a fine narrative-driven horror game. The horror here is more psychological than visceral, more subtle than in your face. And it really works thanks to the excellent atmosphere that the developers have managed to craft. Even when you're wandering the forest in broad daylight, the game manages to keep you feeling at least a little on edge, and when it starts turning the screws, it does a great job of intensifying this feeling and ratcheting up the tension. It's not perfect, there are some pacing problems and a few technical issues, but this is a really interesting horror game with a compelling narrative that you shouldn't overlook. Thanks very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, consider sticking around here at Words About Games. Our content includes review impressions of games big and small, a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing the happenings in and around the games industry, weekly opinion videos, reactions, debate-driven top 5 and top 10 lists, a regular Hall of Fame series where we discuss our favourite games, and indie game spotlights. We also stream every Friday and Saturday at twitch.tv/wordsaboutgames. Most importantly, have a brilliant day.